6 p.m. in Kusuri, that is in the far north region of Cameroon. Same time right here in Akwa Douala. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a 6 p.m. edition of the primetime newscast on Equinoxe television. First, our major stories. A man living with disability gets deprived of his lone source of income. The taxi driver, through Joseph, his car was burnt to ashes by alert separatist fighters at the Church Street, Tarinko neighborhood in Bamenda. The burning of vehicles in Bamenda have become recurrent following the recent decision of a senior divisional officer for Mezam who prohibited the circulation of motorcycles from 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. Meantime, taxi drivers in Bamenda are currently in a dilemma after separatists obliged them to change their taxi color from yellow to blue and white, which is the supposed color of the flag of Ambazonia. And away from that, we'll tell you how a huge fire at a military ammunition depot in Chad has killed at least 9 people and injured 46 others. The explosion from the depot in Guji area, that's in the capital, Jamena, lasted for half an hour yesterday night. That's it for our major stories. Stay with us for details and more. Thank you so much for choosing Equinoxe Television. For presentation, I am Immaculate Fogwe. We'll begin with a sad story where at least 10 people got injured in the Lokpom neighborhood in the Douala 5 subdivision. They were attacked by a group of young men from the Bedi neighborhood. In the course of the attack, several shops were vandalized with their items looted. Locals say the armed young men stormed Carrefour Bangor City to avenge the poor treatment meted on some of their friends who were caught smoking marijuana in the Lokpom neighborhood. Innocent Aze reports.
It was at about 8 p.m. Monday that the attack orchestrated by a gang of hoodlums, close to 20 in number, armed with machetes and knives, occurred precisely at a place called Anten Bangor City in Lokpom, Douala 5 subdivision.
There were much of them coming all over the place, all over the angles on the quarter. You don't even know who is coming. You want to turn your back, you only see a knife and they're having masks. After some of them take this way, going down Beji, some of them are going inside the quarter.
About 10 people were wounded and several shops at the Carrefour vandalized and looted by the criminal gang.
We need security, especially in this quarter. Like it's a new outlet, we really need security here at this Bangos. Because it's too much. It's not the first, it's not the second, this is the third time. And they still promised us that they had to come for more.
According to locals, the armed young men were from Bedi and came to avenge 3 of their friends and gang members who were caught some weeks ago at a football field in Bangor City, allegedly consuming hard drugs and flogged mercilessly at Carrefour and 10 Bangor City by locals. They are said to be from Bedi.
The guys, they were coming from another quarter, just the neighbor called Bedi, so they were the one. So as they came and they intervened for their friends and their brother, they took them away. So there's one of them who is have to die or leave. So that's why they said they were supposed to come back for revenge, what they did to their brother, because they were even asking for what they stole, but they didn't show them anything. So that's why they're coming back from what they say revenge in English.
Gendarme and police officers have been roaming the area, investigating as a move to identify and apprehend the criminals.
We'll leave the city of Douala to the conflict northwest region, precisely in Bamenda, where a physically challenged man is requesting for support after his only source of income was burned down by alert separatist fighters in Church Street, Tarinko, northwest region of the country. Fru Joseph became the 6th victim whose taxi was destroyed on Tuesday. The burning of vehicles in Bamenda for the past few weeks has become rampant after the senior divisional officer for Mezam, Simon Emil Moore, suspended the circulation of commercial motorcycles in Bamenda 1, 2, and 3 from 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. Smajikan Gabriel has the details.
Fru Joseph became the latest victim of the Anglophone crisis in Bamenda, Northwest region. The physically disabled man saw his taxi burnt into ashes by suspected separatist fighters at Church Street in Tarikon.
Please, people should pray for us in Bamenda.
The incident that occurred late Tuesday afternoon was accompanied by gunshots.
Oh my God. which can account to this. They don't leave that money on for update.
Since the senior divisional officer of Mezam, Simon Emil Mo, suspended the circulation of commercial motorcycles in Bamenda as from 6 p.m. each day, taxis and other private vehicles have been targeted by unknown gunmen in the city. In solidarity, some good Samaritan did a free will contribution to support Fru Joseph. It's alleged that separatist fighters now want taxis in Bamenda to change their colors from yellow to blue or white, and at the same time, the forces of law and order are also arresting inhabitants found with taxis painted in white or blue. Fru Joseph's taxi became the seat to be destroyed since the prefectorial order was signed on May 31, 2024.
A difficult situation for local inhabitants living in Bamenda. And now we take you to the conflict southwest region, where inhabitants of Campaign Street New Road are sending distress calls to the government due to the continuous blackouts they have been experiencing for a month now. Asia Luciliengo presents to us the ordeals in the following report.
Residents of Campaign Street, New Road in Boya have been struggling with blackout for the past 1 month.
They told us that they will come and install the transformer that got bad. Right here today, we have no...
Amidst insecurity, the inhabitants are obliged to make use of candles and bush lamps.
So they really suffer for the light issue. For every evening, we get to light our candles for even tri-pack.
Living without electricity has been a nightmare for households and even business persons.
Many things were here, juice, all of that, drinking, they were here. So all of them, they have spoiled. Even this one is still empty because of the light issue. Our things have spoiled here, many things have spoiled here.
Just like this trader, an ice cream vendor who usually sells here has abandoned the activity due to the blackout. Like these, other economic activities have been paralyzed in the neighborhood for the same reason.
It is difficult. You can see there's no way to iron. And now we don't have light. You don't work. You do like the manual way I'm doing it. You need to iron. Some of the people who are able to connect from other transformers, they have collected their money and to connect. And we don't have that transformer around us. It is difficult for us.
The inhabitants say they have lost hope, as on several occasions they have complained, and a meeting was held with some councillors who promised to visit the power utility company, but nothing has been done so far. They are calling on the powers that be to come to their rescue by resolving the problem.
Many things have spoiled, juice, meat, everything.
Asia Luciliengo reporting there. And now we talk something else, the collection of money from students for the organization of defense, decoration of defense halls, and serving of meals in any part of the school premises on the Day of Defense has been banned by the rector of the University of Yaoundé 1. This has been emphasized by the dean of the Faculty of Arts, Letters and Humanities in a correspondence signed recently. Innocent Aze tells us more.
Cameroon is known to be a producer of about 130,000 tons of rice annually, a highly consumed cereal across the national territory. According to statistics, every Cameroonian consumes at least 26 kilograms of rice yearly. The annual demand is close to 600,000 tons for every citizen. A huge demand, whereas rice put at the disposal of the population in markets is usually of bad quality. Personnel in the Ministry of Trade, in collaboration with the National Gendarmerie, recently confiscated a stock of rice whose quality is doubtful. They also discovered and dismantled a packaging factory of rice with questionable quality commercialized by the Dani Crystal Enterprise in the Ahala neighborhood, Yaoundé. The factory was immediately sealed. Investigations are on course for the identification of warehouses and shops where this brand of rice is sold.
That was Father Innocent as a reporting on the seizure or the sealing of a depot where rice of doubtful quality was discovered in the Hala neighborhood there in Yaoundé. Away from that, officials of the French airline company Air France have promised to do everything possible to ameliorate the quality of services offered by the company in Cameroon. This promise comes after travelers in Cameroon and the Cameroon Employers Union openly denounced the deplorable prices and service conditions offered by the airline. Fomi Armstrong Sanda reports.
The reputation of the French airline company began dwindling after the COVID-19 period in Cameroon, going by the release of the Cameroon Enterprise Union, GECAM. Within the past weeks, the situation became so serious with Cameroonian travelers raising concerns on the services and qualities of its flight to and from Cameroon. In a letter signed on June 10, 2024, and addressed to the Director General of Air France Cameroon, the President of the Cameroon Employers Union, Celestin Tawamba, spoke of deplorable conditions. He also raised several other critical problems relating to prices, security, and the quality of services offered by the airline company. GECAM, first of all, highlights a continuous increase in ticket prices since the post-COVID-19 period, reaching prohibitive levels for Cameroonian businesses and travelers. On safety concerns, Celestin Tawamba decried the obsolescence of the aircraft used by Air France in Cameroon, raising major concerns regarding passenger safety. To get their voice further, GECAM channeled its worries to the General Secretariat of the Presidency of the Republic of Cameroon, that of the Prime Minister, and the Ministry of Transport. In a response, the Minister of Transport, Jean-Ernest Massinangale Bibe, says he has received in audience officials of the airline company Air France. At the end of the discussions, Air France KLM officials reassured the minister of their commitment to improve in the services offered by the company in Cameroon. The Ministry of Transport, on its part, affirmed to be optimistic for the imminent realization of these promises, which aims to improve relations between the destination Cameroon and the company Air France.
Fomi Armstrong Sanda reporting there. Coming up, we'll look at land disputes versus the law. The latter seems to be overwhelming the former. Growing land disputes appear to make the laws inexistent, outdated, or powerless. Babla Jonathan talked to a land law expert and compiled the following report.
From the major cities and towns to the hinterlands, land disputes arrive in Cameroon. Social peace is threatened by conflicts emanating from land exploitation by individuals, groups of persons, and communities.
Land disputes does not mean that the laws do not exist. The laws are there. The 1974 ordinances are there to regulate the use of land. Many Cameroonians do not really master the text in force, the text governing landed property management, because you still find people buying land in marshy areas, you find people buying on registered lands, you find people double selling, and you realize that many people are out of ignorance.
The land-related conflicts are mounting pressure on the existing land tenure laws. Some observers think the existing laws are outdated to an extent and should be revised to meet present-day challenges. With understanding of the issue as a land law expert actively involved in the resolution of land conflicts in his capacity as Division Officer of Dollar 5, Dr. Asongwe Cletus believes the laws are up to the task despite the pressure.
There is so much pressure, but I think that the laws as they are not as bad as people think. People just have that notion that the laws are bad and they are calling for reforms. But when you go into them, you realize that almost everything is provided for. It is just for stakeholders to implement them the way they are.
Dr. Asongwe Cletus says resolving the problem of land disputes demands a concerted effort of the administration, other stakeholders, and the population.
Our role now as administrative authorities is to make sure that the rules and regulations are completely followed. We call on the population. Each time they have an issue, to consult the administrative offices to get the right information.
He and other land law experts are advocating for the enhancement of land law education for the population as a key component of efforts to curb land disputes in the country.
And out of Cameroon, 9 people were killed and more than 40 others injured in an explosion at a military ammunition depot in Chad. According to local authorities, the cause of the fire is not yet known. And in South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa has been sworn in for a second mandate as president of the country. Details of these stories and more with our reporter, Cedric Chakutio.
9 people were killed and more than 40 injured when a fire triggered at a military munitions depot in Chad's capital, N'Djamena. Government spokesman Abdurrahman Koulimala said 46 people were being treated for various injuries after the explosions woke residents from their sleep late Tuesday in the Gucci district of the capital, N'Djamena. The explosions lit up the sky as thick smoke covered clouds in the West African country, sparking frantic efforts to put out the fire as residents fled their homes for shelter. The cause of the fire was not immediately clear, but President Mahamat Idris Deby Itno said on his Facebook page that investigations will be carried out. For now, authorities called on residents to stay away from the area, which was retaken by security forces. Elsewhere in Kenya, Kenya's government has scrapped some proposed taxes in this year's controversial financial bill, including a 60% levy on bread, after a public outcry. The announcement by MPs came as police fired tear gas and used water cannon to try to disperse angry protesters in the capital, Nairobi. Dozens of people have been arrested and lawyers earlier joined chanting crowds at the city's main police station to demand that detainees be freed. Since coming to office in 2022, President William Ruto has introduced several new unpopular taxes with the aim of eliminating the country's national debt. Some of the protesters marching through the capital called on the president to resign, shouting, "Ruto must go, Ruto must go." And in South Africa, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa was sworn in for his second mandate on Wednesday after a tedious last month election. Ramaphosa secured his position after gathering majority votes among members of parliament allied to the African National Congress ANC. The Democratic Alliance and other parties backed his candidacy in parliament last week.
I am humbled and honored that you, as members of the National Assembly, have, through your votes tonight, decided to elect me to be the President of the Republic of South Africa.
Ramaphosa won accordingly in Parliament against a surprise candidate who was also nominated, Julius Malema of the far-left Economic Freedom Fighters. Ramaphosa received 283 votes to Malema's 44 in the 400-member House.
That international news ends this first part of the news. Talking Point is up next. Cameroon joins the world to commemorate World Sickle Cell Day today. At least hundreds of thousands of babies each year are born with this disease. How then can we prevent more cases from coming to existence? That's what we'll be answering in today's edition of Talking Point. And as guest, I have Dr. Kifem Vincentia, a pediatric hemato-oncologist. Good evening. It is a pleasure having you on Talking Point tonight. What is sickle cell disease all about?
Hello, Immaculate. Good evening. Thank you for having me on Talk Show tonight. Good evening to our televiewers. Sickle cell disease is a genetic condition which results from inheritance of 2 abnormal hemoglobin genes from both parents, called hemoglobin S. So, when one parent has an abnormal hemoglobin and passes it to the offspring, and the other parents too passes an abnormal hemoglobin to the offspring, it will result in a child having 2 abnormal hemoglobin called SS, and this will result in sickle cell disease. And in our body we have blood which circulates in blood vessels. And this blood is made up of various cells. We have the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and the platelets. Hemoglobin is a substance that is found inside the red blood cells. And this hemoglobin is responsible for carrying oxygen from one part of the body to the other. So in the situation of sickle cell disease, where a child inherits this abnormal hemoglobin from both parents, this abnormal hemoglobin is going to cause their red blood cells not to have the normal round shape which the normal red blood cells have, but the red blood cells will rather have a sickled shape or a shape like a banana, and that is what we call sickle cell. And these cells, because their shape is abnormal, when the blood cells are circulating to the various blood vessels, they are going to clog in these blood vessels and prevent adequate blood circulation. And because of that, there will be lack of oxygen supply to the distant tissues, leading to those symptoms, the pains that we experience in sickle cell disease.
Now, Dr. Kifem, is there a difference between sickle cell disease and a sickle cell trait?
The difference between sickle cell trait and sickle cell disease is that a sickle cell trait, or someone who is a sickle cell disease carrier, has one normal hemoglobin A, and one abnormal hemoglobin S, whereas a person that has sickle cell disease has two abnormal hemoglobin, that's hemoglobin SS. And the person who is a sickle cell carrier or sickle cell trait does not manifest the symptoms of sickle cell disease, unlike the person that has sickle cell disease that will manifest symptoms. So when you are a carrier, you don't have those signs and symptoms that patients with sickle cell disease manifest, because you just have one abnormal hemoglobin, whereas a person with sickle cell disease has two abnormal hemoglobin.
Now, we have a lot of Cameroonians who have limited knowledge about this particular type of disease. What are the chances of parents having a baby with sickle cell disease?
The chances of parents having a child with sickle cell disease depends on the genotype of both parents. Either you have normal genotype or carrier of sickle cell disease. So if both parents have normal genotype, they cannot have a child with sickle cell disease or have a child with a carrier. And if one parent is a carrier and the other one is normal, then all their children, none of them have sickle cell disease, but they can have a 25% chance of having a child who is a carrier. Then if both parents are carriers of sickle cell disease, then they have a 25% chance of having a child with sickle cell disease with each pregnancy, 50% chance of having normal children, and 25% chance of having children that are carrier with each pregnancy. And if one parent is sickle cell and the other parent is a carrier, then all the children will be carrier, but none of them will have sickle cell disease. If one parent is a carrier and the other one is sickle cell disease, then there's a 50% chance of having a child with sickle cell disease with each pregnancy, a 50% chance of having children that are carrier. So 25% chance of having children that are carrier and 25% chance of having children that are normal. And if both parents have sickle cell disease, then all the children obviously have sickle cell disease. So that's why I said it depends on the genotype of both parents.
For someone who is a sickler, how is the diagnosis done?
The diagnosis of sickle cell disease is done using a blood test, which we call hemoglobin electrophoresis. So it's a test where we check the level of check the various types of hemoglobin that we have. You see a percentage of hemoglobin A, hemoglobin S, and so on. And based on that, we are able to know whether you have sickle cell disease or not. So it's called hemoglobin electrophoresis.
We have heard a lot of stories surrounding this particular type of disease. What are some of the myths surrounding sickle cell that are not true?
The diagnosis of sickle cell disease is done using a blood test, which we call hemoglobin electrophoresis. So it's a test where we check the level of check the various types of hemoglobin that we have. You see a percentage of hemoglobin A, hemoglobin S, and so on. And based on that, we are able to know whether you have sickle cell disease or not. So it's called hemoglobin electrophoresis.
Now, I want you to come back to the myths. Could you tell us what are some of the myths that surround this particular disease? I guess you didn't get that right.
Regarding the myths surrounding sickle cell disease or those abnormal beliefs that people have about sickle cell disease, there are so many of them, but I will just list a few. And the very common one is that children with sickle cell disease cannot live above 21 years. That is not true. It is not true. So sickle cell disease is a chronic disease like any other sickness, like HIV, like diabetes, hypertension, that needs follow-up so as to prevent complications. And so when these children are adequately followed up closely and they are compliant to their treatment, they can live normal lives free of all these crises, these problems that I've described. They experience less, they grow up, they get married, have their own children. We have survivors or sickle cell disease warriors who are up to 60, 70, 80 years. We have sickle cell disease patients who are doctors, engineers, so they can live beyond 21 years. So that makes it is not like that. It's just that in our context, because of unawareness of these diseases and people don't seek medical attention and the problem of late diagnosis and poor follow-up, we end up losing most of these children even before the age of 5 years. But if they are adequately followed up, they can live well into adulthood and enjoy normal life without any problem. And then the second myth about sickle cell disease is that it is attributed to witchcraft. So the fact that these children are requiring frequent transfusions, people think that maybe they belong to some, suicide or marine kingdoms where you give them blood, they go there and they drain it. And they drain there. So it is attributed to witchcraft, which is not true. We have seen that it is a genetic condition. That is how the child was born. It's right from when conception happened. So it has nothing to do with witchcraft. And then the third myth about sickle cell is that the sickle cell disease patients, they like to, they fake symptoms or their pain, they are faking it. No, it is this vaso-occlusive crisis that they experience or those painful crises, they are really painful. And if they require analgesics, we need to give them medicine for pain because they actually do feel pain. So these are just some of the few beliefs that people have about sickle cell disease.
As someone who works with these patients on a daily basis, what are some of the challenges faced by sickle cell patients and those taking care of them?
Parents of children with sickle cell disease face a lot of challenges. The very first challenge is the one of having a child that is sick, who is always sick. It's a great challenge. And so they have to be in the hospital on and off. And because of that, it causes frequent absenteeism from their job site. It can lead to issues at the level of their job sites. They also have other children at home that need to be taken care of, and yet they need to leave them to be in the hospital with these ones when they fall sick. The second great challenge that these parents face is that of finances. Taking care of a child with sickle cell disease is very costly. As I mentioned, these are children that fall sick often, so they need to be hospitalized, they need antibiotics, they need frequent blood transfusion, and so on. Also, besides that, we need to follow them up, so they are on routine medications that they need to take daily to prevent them from having complications. And so this poses a great financial burden to the family. And the third problem is a cause of many marital issues at home. There are some marriages that have scattered because there's a child with sickle cell disease. I've seen parents whose spouses or women whose spouses have abandoned them because they gave birth to a child that has a lot of marital conflict and so on. So imagine having to use family resources every time to come to the hospital. A child is discharged within a month, maybe you are going back and so on. So it was really very challenging for these families.
Dr. Kifem Vincentia, pediatric hemato-oncologist at the Baptist Hospital in Mutenge in the Southwest region. Thank you so much for your time. And that's where we'll put an end to today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. Stay in the company of more interesting programs on Equinoxe TV. See you tomorrow, same time, God willing.